The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
It's the Best Birth Podcast, where we interview experts that elevate you as you prepare your heart and mind to have the best birth.
Each episode will interview professionals so you are prepared for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Our experts will build your confidence and empower you to trust your intuition throughout your pregnancy.
This audio is taken from videos on YouTube. Watch the entire episodes on YouTube at Birth Made Mindful. You're listening to the Best Birth Podcast. We're here today with Holly Hill, our lactation expert, and we are thrilled to talk all about breastfeeding, bottle feeding, lactation, pumping, and anything else you could imagine.
If you're able to, make sure to locate the video of this episode because there will be lots of demonstrations and hands-on techniques. Holly Hill works with the Breezy Babies team and has her own business called Light Up Lactation. She's been a nurse since 2005 and a lactation consultant since 2017. She loves teaching and working with families and babies. Her soapbox slogan is "Protect the nipples all the time." When she's not out and about helping families, she can be found working on a creative project at home, camping, traveling with her husband and kids, and she has a goal of international travel once a year. She is often found planning her next adventure. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So good. Well, let's just dive right in. We have a baby here. The fundamental elements of a good latch. Let's just start with that.
Okay, we are going to jump right in. So I love having props, and you will always find me with some show and tell. So getting the very best latch honestly starts with the very best positioning. And so I see a lot of parents inconveniencing themselves to like bend and curl or tweak to try to get that baby latched on. But it's way more about how the baby is the moving piece. It's never going to be the breast. No matter how hard a person tries, it will never be the breast coming off to the baby. So number one, that mom has got to be comfortable. So sit comfortably wherever she is, grab pillows as needed. So I have this pillow right here today. And whatever pillow you use, whether it's a breastfeeding specific pillow or a couch pillow, a bed pillow, I've even used a squishmallow in some families. So just it's whatever is accessible and makes the most sense. So get cozy where you're at and then bring baby all the way up to breast height. Now, remember, I was just showing like the inconvenient tweaking. We don't want any of this. We want to be all nice and comfortable. And I dropped the pillow. So you'll still get the idea there. Oh, thank you. I was going to leave it be.
So we can't leave it be if we need it for the baby.
Can't. Right. So I will actually show you both, latching with and without a pillow. Here, number one, bring baby all the way up to breast height. Number two, roll that baby onto their side. That right there is huge because now we've put baby into a straight line from ear to shoulder to hip. That's always what we're looking for. Because when I'm teaching about latching and positioning, I always compare it to how do we eat? How do we take a drink? Do we hold our water cup to our shoulder and twist like this to take a drink? No, nobody does. And neither can a baby. So if the baby is on their back and they're twisting this way, it's going to close off their throat and it will always create a shallow latch. So in protecting the nipples all the time, get that very best positioning.
And so is that baby's belly towards mom's belly? Is that a good way to think about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Tummy to tummy, belly to belly, heart to heart, however you want to think about it. Okay, now what do we do with these arms?
What do we do with the baby's arms?
Oh my gosh, they're in the way all the time. So there are a few things that we can do. With this bottom arm, it can wrap under the breast. So think about like the baby giving a big hug. Yeah, that is exactly it. Or it can be pinned in between your two bellies. So whichever way works. Now, if there is a supporter person, then I recommend that they just hold that hand close by because a baby wants their hand up. Here, we'll get that one wrapped around. That is where the baby wants their hand to be.
So right now, for those not watching the YouTube video, the baby is hugging around mama right now.
Exactly. So hugging the breast, or you could also think about their arms like making a frame around. That helps them know that they're stable and they're connected and they're not going to fall anywhere. Yeah. So if there is a support person, just have them hold the hand nearby. If there's not a support person, that hand can actually be just tucked in between the boobs. It's a great place to just kind of anchor that hand. Okay, so now we're almost there. There are two ways that I like to get this very first latch. So one of the main questions that I get is, what's the very best positioning? And my answer here is the one that feels the most comfortable and creates the very best latch with mom and baby. So there's no one right answer here because it's going to be different since everybody's anatomy is different. Buddy's labor and birth is different. We're going for what's going to be most comfortable for everybody.
And do you recommend changing the positions while you are kind of experimenting, or do you say, let's focus on just one position at first, get that established, and then we can move on the next day to different positions?
So that's an excellent question, but my answer is going to be, it depends.
Okay.
It's so different for everybody. Like some of my clients are like, I can do one position and one position only, and I don't want to change it. So I say, okay, then we'll go with that. But others are like, I want to try all the positions. So we go with that. In the classes that I teach, I talk about all of the different ways that you can latch your baby. But then when I'm working with an individual client, that's it. It's totally up to her and the baby.
So in my personal experience, changing the positions would often help to protect my nipples. And since that is one of Holly's slogans, I'll just kind of share with you why. So by having the baby suck from different angles, it would put a little bit of pressure in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I always made sure that they had a deep latch so that their hard palate wasn't against my nipple, but it still would help to rotate. So sometimes we would do like a koala position. Sometimes it would be the football hold. Other times crossbody or, like directly lining up. And Holly will take us through some of the positions as well so we can know what our options are.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right there next. So first I'll talk through the cross cradle hold and then we'll go to the traditional cradle just so you can see all of that. While we're by your side when you were having your babies, I would have said it's more about positioning. So let's kind of tweak that so you get the better latch so that nipple isn't just mashed against the hard palate. Oh, there are ways that we get there. Okay. So for the cross cradle, this is when baby is aligned nose to nipple, and that is so very important. Nose to nipple, not mouth to nipple.
Mm-hmm.
And I will come back around to that. So for the support, it's the parent's opposite arm coming around where that elbow grabs the bum, forearm lands on the back, palm to the shoulders, thumb to one ear, middle finger to the other ear. I see so many parents try to cup the top back of the baby's head and force them on. That's never going to work.
And so it's more about your hand cradling the base of the neck. Is that right?
Absolutely. And so for the video here, my hand is like making a supportive collar at the top of the shoulders, bottom of the neck, right? Or base of the head, if you want to think about it that way. We are using a Cabbage Patch.
My own from my youth.
Which I love so much because in my box of baby dolls for the classes that I teach, I have my own Cabbage Patches from my youth as well. Anyway, so anchor the thumb at one ear, middle finger at the other ear. So, okay, that's that. That is the support and the structure. So now I come to the closest hand to the breast is purely for shaping. Now, for those of you here, I want you to put your hand on your breast and show me how you think we do it. So the reason why I had you do this is because most people put their hand on their breast like a C. Because when we're looking at our nipples, that's what we do. We're trying to figure out what's going on there, right? But if baby is lined up across the body this way and the hand is making a C shape, well, really you made a taco shape to the baby. And so they're just going to latch on to the nipple because that's all that's poking out. And that right there creates pain. So when we think about how we eat tacos, we hold it up to our face this way. We never take a bite straight on when it's narrow like that. We always tip the taco, tip our heads, and then take a big bite, and then we get a bite of everything. Another way to think about it is like a really tall hamburger. So hold up your pretend hamburger. What do you do first?
Kind of squish it down.
Yeah, you got it. We got to squish it down. Now what? A big open mouth to take a bite. Exactly. That's what's going on here. But have you ever had the time where you end up with a lot of bun on top and just a little bit on the bottom? Drives me crazy all the time. Well, that's because when we bring it up to our mouths, we land on our bottom teeth first and then roll it in. So we're always taking a bigger bite from the bottom, never the center, never up above, always the bottom. That is what a breastfeeding latch is.
Okay.
So to get there, let me get comfortable in the chair here. Baby is all the way up at breast height. I know I'm going to talk about the latch, but notice where my shoulders are. For those of you who can see the video, are they low or are they high at my ears?
They're high at the ears.
Okay. So I wiggle and I relax. How about now?
Now they're low.
That's how we wanted it. Okay. So if I were sitting in this pillow or this chair, I might shift this way to the side so I have space for my elbow to come down. Or I might just hang my elbow off the other side. It does hitch my shoulder up a little bit, but we can adjust that in a minute. So here, I'm going to, instead of holding my hand like a C, I'm going to scooch under, not quite like a U, but kind of somewhere in between. So that doesn't matter so much as, there you go, having the thumbnail directly across from the baby's nose. Then you're always making that right hamburger shape. Okay, squish the hamburger. The baby is lined up nose to nipple. Wait for the baby to open up wide. And then that hand that's the supportive collar on the back shoulders just hugs baby straight forward. So then they're going to land their chin and then roll on. Notice that I said bringing baby in, not stretching the breast out, because that never works. So I always bring props. And for the video, I do have a purple boob here. All right. And Sarah's got the brown boob. Great. So we have it here. So when we're turned on the side, so we're doing side view here, we first compress the breast, and then with the thumb on top, it actually tips the nipple up a little bit. So the baby's mouth is aimed mouth at areola, nose at nipple. So when they open up wide like this, the hand on the shoulders pulls baby in so the chin lands first, and then baby rocks on to the nipple. So you want to see more areola at the top, so by baby's lip and nose, and little to none below their chin. Because it's called breastfeeding, it's not called nipple feeding. That nipple needs to land deep in the baby's mouth, so it's not just at the front of their mouth at the hard palate, but that nipple is pointing way up to the roof where there's a lot of space. We call it the comfort zone. That is what a good latch is. Okay, so those are all of our elements to get there. Now let's look at some other positions.
So this is where we bring in without the pillow?
Yep,
Okay.
We're going without the pillow. So I ditched the pillow. Here, you're going to go for a traditional cradle hold. So to get there, I actually like to start in skin-to-skin hold. So this is also called mindful latching position. So you're being mindful of everywhere where the baby is going. We're not just like throwing the baby over there, which I see a lot where they're like, well, just hurry and get this latch. Starting in skin-to-skin hold. So that's with baby's face is above the breast, their body is between the breasts, and the feet are just tucked up below. Now, the arm that's closest to the breast, it's going the arm that's closest to the breast where the baby will be latching. That's what I'm trying to say. So you come down from the shoulders and then grab the baby's bum. And the opposite hand directs the other side of the shoulders to just scooch them down, scoop them down all the way. So we're adjusting the arms. And then here, the baby's head is landing in the crook of my elbow. My shoulders are low. Both elbows are low. Baby's hips are just resting on my leg. In fact, usually when I'm here, I'll have a crossed leg. So then, let's see, I'm latching baby onto the right, and then I crossed my right leg over so it props up my hip there. So your body is supporting the weight of the baby, not your arm. So that makes a huge difference too. Okay, baby is lined up nose to nipple, not mouth to nipple. All right, now opposite hand comes in. It's hard to get a tweaked wrist and making that thumbnail across. This position doesn't even make sense. My shoulder is high, my elbow is high, my wrist is tweaked. That's not lasting for anybody. So in this case, keeping the body nice and comfortable, I do 3 fingers below the breast and then first finger right above. Hey, I always think when I say first finger, I'm a musician. So when we're talking about music, and that's like always first finger.
Index finger.
Yeah, index finger, pointer finger, whatever you want to call it. So we have it there. 3 fingers below, 1 finger above. And the 1 finger above tilts that nipple up because, again, we are aiming for the roof of the mouth, not the very front. Baby opens up wide, and then the forearm on the back hugs baby straight in. Okay, once it's a good latch, no matter what positioning it is, once it feels good, the nipple doesn't hurt, baby's in a sucking pattern, we're hearing some swallows, then slowly remove that hand, and then it's a free hand. What I love about this position is that this arm, the one that is holding baby in place, baby's really anchored. And so the mom could put a hand on the shoulder here, stand up, and walk around. It is possible. So not always at the very beginning, but sometimes when it's a really challenging situation and I help the couplet work through any problems that they're having, once they get to smooth sailing, that's when I teach them this one so they don't feel like they're just anchored and trapped.
I was able to successfully breastfeed my babies in their Ergo Baby like in their wrap, but I would just lower it quite a bit on my hips so that their nose was aligned.
Amazing.
And that was also a game changer to then run after my other toddlers.
My gosh, yes, of course. And I love that. And so usually when I'm talking with a mom who has other kids, I do recommend that.
But it definitely wasn't at first, like that was a couple of weeks in, maybe even a couple of months in, that we were able to kind of make that situation work out for us.
Amazing. I never figured that out personally. So I'm always so proud of others who do. It's amazing.
I always hear about bassinets and things at night where you could just feed your baby right there in bed. Again, I was never able to do that, but my cousin was able to, and other things. So yeah, you find what works for you and maybe learn over time as well.
Can we talk about just a couple other positions?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you did mention the koala hold. So I wanted to talk about and demonstrate that one. So that one, I still will start with skin to skin and then shift baby down. I also call it straddle. So baby is upright. The parent is upright. Baby is like sitting upright with their legs on either side of the parent's leg. And so here, then one hand is at the baby's shoulders. The other hand is the breast shaping hand. Get that latch and then hang on to baby's shoulders. The parent could even lay back from here like that. Let's say she's chilling in bed, on a couch, at a park, I don't know, wherever. That one is an awesome one. When it's a little more laid back like this, or reclined, then it is called laid back. So you can combine both of those.
One of the reasons I love the koala hold is for a baby who has reflux. Oftentimes they are advised to sit upright after feeding, but if you're feeding in the middle of the night and then you have 20 more minutes to hold them upright before you can lay them down, if we would do a koala hold, it seemed like their reflux would be soothed in a way because they weren't going from shrinking in a sideways position to then sitting up and having a lot of comfort and those bubbles within them.
Yeah, absolutely. I also see that it's so great for a parent who has a really forceful letdown, because if the baby is below the breast, then it's like taking a sip on a fire hose. It's like, whoa, way too much, too fast. But when a baby is more level with the milk flow, then it slows it down just a little bit. I see the reflux and a fast flow and getting too much too fast to go together.
Can you tell us a little bit more about letdowns? What if we're not having that sensation of tingling? Are we still getting adequate milk?
Absolutely. So I'm so glad that you asked this question, because letdown is an umbrella term. And letdown is just kind of it's the term that everybody uses, but all it means is your milk is flowing. That's it. In the medical world, we call it milk ejection reflex. That's not as pretty as letdown, right? So some moms feel it and some don't. So it's not a requirement to feel it. So if you are somebody who doesn't feel your milk flowing, then I point out all of the other signs. So as baby is latched on, you'll feel them go from like the fast and light little sucks, suck, 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 suck. And then it goes suck, 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 swallow, because like that milk is flowing. So you don't have to feel all of the sensations in order to have a letdown. So letdown just means milk flowing. And because it's an umbrella, some parents feel tingling, some feel like a really intense pressure and then a let go, kind of like a dam bursting. Others feel really hot and sweaty, even up into the armpit, because the breast is actually shaped like a wing. Did you know that? So it's the roundness on the chest. It comes to a point in the armpit. So that's how it's like a wing. So there is breast tissue and sweat glands all tangled up in armpits.
Now, when we think about how fast a baby is nursing, is there a recommended number of minutes that we are having baby to breast for a specific feed?
No, not at all. So this is where if a family is birthing in a hospital, and I say that because hospitals have been the majority of my career experience, even though I know that there are lots of other birth settings. So I'm just taking this as one example. They're very much numbers oriented. What time did things happen? How many minutes did this happen? What time did the baby pee or poop or do anything? So everything is charted and documented. So even though it's asked about, I don't care so much about the minutes. I care more about the quality. So just as I talked about the pattern, that is always what I'm looking for. Short, fast, slow, strong sucks, and then a swallow that you can hear. In the beginning, that swallow is so quiet. It's like a little, right? Or like a, very, very quiet. So sometimes when I'm watching, I just watch the sucking pattern, and then I kind of am anticipating that slow, strong suck. And then I look and I listen. And that's when I love to point out the swallows, because it's happening, but parents aren't always catching it because they don't know what the sound is like, what the feel is like. So I'm way more about the quality. If a baby has only a 5-minute feeding, but I've heard a ton of swallows, oh, I count it. It's great. But then other kids take 35 minutes, and maybe it's on both sides, and maybe it's been back and forth 3 times. Minutes don't mean anything. I've worked with another kiddo recently who ate for 45 minutes every single feeding, got a ton of volume, so then he went longer spaces in between feeds. Every adult is unique in how they eat, and so we need to remember that babies are just tiny humans, and their eating styles are just as unique as ours.
And then is eat, play, sleep a good feeding rhythm schedule for the baby?
So I hope you hear in everything that I'm saying how individual it is.
Yes, right. Yes.
So even on that, it can be. It can be a really great rhythm for some families, but it's not one of those blanket statements that's going to be great for everybody. I do like that after a baby is about a month old, that you try to keep them up for more time during the daytime so that then they'll start to do better sleep at night. And it is interesting that the better a baby plays, then the better those daytime naps are. And the quality of daytime naps influence the quality of nighttime sleep.
One of the benefits of doing this type of, you eat, you play, and then you sleep is so that the baby is not dependent upon breastfeeding in order to sleep. So you want to kind of disassociate the need for mom and lots of comfort time before the baby can lay down. For some babies, they want the opposite and they have to have it. But if you can wake them up from their nap, or if they wake up from sleep and then that's when you feed them, then they'll have a little bit of playtime and then they'll be ready to go back down.
Which is so great for some families, but it's not going to work for all of them.
It doesn't work for all, but if you want to try to establish a system where you're not as dependent upon, like milk is always the precursor to them being able to sleep, it's a system that you could try. I have a lot of questions about the struggles with breastfeeding. So when you are getting into the whole swing of things and all of a sudden you feel sick or you feel like you have an infection or there's damage to your nipples, what are kind of the steps that we take to protect them?
Okay, so those are all different scenarios that I would talk about. So let's take sore nipples first. So sore nipples, let me come back to my crocheted breast model here. When a baby has a very centered, so a centered aim and shallow latch, then baby is using the front part of their gums to just chew on the nipple. And so it would come out flattened, shaped like a lipstick, pressed, or like you fold over a piece of paper and put a crease in it. So all of those mean shallow latches. So number 1, fix the positioning, fix the latch. But then let's say there is some nipple damage there. At that point, number 1 is always mom's own milk. So we need to remember that milk is medicine. And so it has all of those protective qualities to kill bacteria and kill viruses and kill fungus. And it has those repairing cells to heal and build up that skin again, which is amazing. Mom's own milk first. Sometimes it's appropriate to bring in a barrier like a nipple shield just through that healing stage. Sometimes not. Again, that's very individual. I love, after mom's own milk, any type of nipple cream. Mother Love is one of my favorites. Earth Mama is my next favorite. They both have undulate in it, which if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I've heard it so many different ways. That's how I pronounce it. I have heard and I've read and I've seen that does a lot of good for healing. Next, beyond that, there's a product called Medi Honey. I get it on Amazon. It's the best price because that's just how it goes. Now, we don't give raw honey to babies less than a year of age because there is a risk of botulism, so we stay away from raw honey. But honey has been around forever and ever and ever, and its medicinal properties have been known forever. So what makes this different is that it's been sterilized. So essentially, the risk of infection is cooked out of it. So I use that a good 3 times a day. So some people like the silverettes. Those are little silver caps that they look like little silver hats that can go on the nipple. There's silver spray. There's also all-purpose nipple ointment. So those are kind of my arsenal, I guess, or all of the tools in my toolbox to help heal with nipples. And then at the same time, we're working on the latch. We're talking about pumping, which I would love to have some time to talk about pumping. So that would be number 1 in healing it. Sometimes a mom is like, I just don't even want to look at it. I don't want to touch it. I can't latch my baby there. And I say, that's fine. Latch baby on the side that's not painful. And we'll focus on healing and either hand expressing the painful side or pumping the painful side. So still got to keep that milk moving. So that brings us right along to, let's talk about mastitis. So, all right, baby doll, moving right along there. Okay, so I think everybody should be comfortable with having hands on their own bodies. And so that comes to talking about breasts. Now, there is a technique called breast gymnastics, and this was created by the most amazing lactation consultant. Her name is Maya Bullman. And so in breast gymnastics, you're going to start with just 2 hands on your breast, very, very lightly. And this is like the same pressure that you would use to stroke your baby's face. So very, very lightly. And I'm saying this and emphasizing it because in the past we talked about if you have clogs, if you have milk that's stuck, dig your knuckles in, really force it out. So there's been a lot of research that showed that that is causing internal damage. And so that's hindering more than helping. So now the swing is gentle, soft, delicate. Think about your breast tissue as glands that they are. So in thinking about it that way, knowing that it's delicate, you would never like grab a kidney and squeeze it so hard, right? Like Sarah's face was perfect. We don't do that. And yet we change the rules when it comes to breasts. So we are needing to remember that everything is soft, gentle, and delicate. So we're going to do 2 light hands, lifting up gently. And you're going to notice that as you lift, and everybody can try this at home. If you want to try this along with me, you can. The more you do it, the more in tune you'll be with your body. And so with the lift, you're going to feel a little bit of stretch just right underneath. So once you feel that stretch just start to soften, that's when you know that you can start moving. So the first movement is just a gentle swoop to the side. And then sometimes there's like, I swooped to the outer part of my body. So on the inner part, I would feel a little bit of a stretch. So then let that stretch relax and then swoop to the other side. And same thing, I swoop to the middle. So I might feel some stretch on the outer edge. And then cartwheel in a circle because they're gymnastics. Okay. And then my closest hand is going to lift the breast up very, very gently. And then my opposite hand is going to do soft circles and some soft sweeps from the breast up toward the armpit. So what we're trying to do here is get rid of any inflammation, any extra fluid that's gotten trapped in there, any toxins that have been trapped in there too. Sometimes emotions as well. That's kind of the woo-woo side that we don't always talk about, but it is so true. And sometimes our emotions can get lodged there because our breasts are at the same level as our heart. And so I like to treat a person as the whole person that they are. So we can't just separate out breasts when everyone is a whole person. Okay, so we are sweeping anything extra up to the armpits where there's the lymph nodes, and then that's the drainage system to get rid of it.
So instead of sweeping down, as if you were like sweeping it out the nipple, you're going to sweep up.
Exactly. It is opposite from what we've talked about in the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm getting at is before we even talk about mastitis as an infection, it starts as inflammation first. So if we take the word down to just its roots, itis means inflammation, mast means mammary tissue. So it's inflammation in the mammary tissue. So if we can get rid of all that inflammation, then we prevent it from going into infection in the first place. Breast gymnastics, decrease the inflammation, get the best latch, help the milk flow out. So, and that's it. Clogs in the way that we used to think about them, like a gunk in the middle of a pipe. That's how I used to talk about it. And you need to like force some pressure to get it out. Yeah. I love Jen's face there too. Like that sounds horrible. We don't do that anymore because when we know better, we do better. So it's all about gentle. And what we used to think were clogs, it's actually the extra pressure is narrowing those milk duct tubes. So it's actually pinching it off. And then that's where the backflow comes from. And so that's where the clumpy lumpiness comes from, is the backflow. If the inflammation isn't relieved, if that continues to stay stuck, then there is bacteria that can start to build up there because everybody has bacteria everywhere. The old thought that it used to be a wound on the nipple allows the bacteria from the outside to come in. But really the bacteria is already there. We need a good mix of bacteria. It's the heterogeneity, I believe is the word, like a good mix of bacteria. So when there is pressure, when there is stress, then one bacteria starts to grow. So then it becomes too homogeneous. And if that inflammation is not taken care of, then that one bacteria grows into the infection, and then it's a bacterial infection. So we take care of the inflammation and decrease any of that extra swelling, the pain, the fluid. By doing that, it eliminates the bacteria. That is really only one piece. If I'm working with somebody who says, oh, I think I have mastitis because I feel these lumps and my breast hurts and I have redness on my skin, then I say breast gymnastics every 30 minutes to an hour. Make sure that you're latching your baby well. You're not pumping to excess. You're taking ibuprofen. You can take Tylenol. Put some cold packs. Remember, we used to say heat and then dig in. So it's cold and gentle because we're all about decreasing the inflammation. Just your body. I do say get in bed, put your pajamas on, park yourself on your couch, wherever it is, and do this for a solid 24 hours. So active management is key. And I have seen this prevent a full bacterial infection time and time again. It's amazing.
And preventative care is so important because you're able to then prevent something from escalating and causing more emotional or, like physical strain on the situation.
Oh, for sure.
Is there anything that is related to pumping that can help us to avoid those clogged ducts there at the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. I have loved talking about pumping lately because there is so much more we know about that. So there's an Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, and they're the ones who came out with a new protocol about mastitis. So around the same time, we also got new information about measuring nipples and correct flanges. For this example, I have my crocheted boob here with a purple nipple, and the pump is a size 28.5 millimeter. Okay, so if that nipple goes in, there is a lot of extra space here. So that means that this flange looks way too big for the nipple. We don't know the nipple size just yet, but just visually, it looks way too big. Now, the problem here is that a continued flange that is too big creates a lot of swelling around the areola. And just as I was talking about the inflammation and the swelling and the narrowed milk ducts, that's what happens here. So it's just right at the end of the milk duct tube at the nipple. So that swelling is going to close off those milk duct tubes. And then the pumping is having to be harder and stronger to get it out, which can cause nipple damage and more swelling and more pain. So then it's like a vicious cycle. I am all about measuring nipples. Now, the tool that I brought today, this is an art tool, but I love it because it is clear and it's thin. There are a lot of silicone ones out there, and a lot of people love to use those. This is just kind of my tried and true. This is my third ruler that I've gotten through. And it's only $5, and they've been amazing. Anyway, that's my little plug about I love using my ruler.
And do you recommend that everybody gets one themselves so that they can know right off the bat, like what their size is?
They could. I recommend more just working with a lactation consultant. Or if you have a lactation expert in your birth setting, they should be measuring your nipples. And if they don't have a ruler, they can get one so easily. There is one on the Breezy Babies website for free that you can print out, cut the circles, measure your own nipples. So it's good to have that knowledge at home. It's better to have a lactation specialist to help you out. Both of those. Okay, so with this nipple, I hope I can convey this accurately through the video. So I'm holding up the size 28 millimeter because my ruler is in whole sizes, not half sizes. So here, there is so much wiggle room, even this way, so much space. And so that would tell me like, oh yeah, that 28 is way too big. So I can just see that it's not even worth going down to a 24. I'm just going to go straight down to the teen numbers. So I'm going to start at 19. We're getting closer, but there's still a lot of wiggle room. 18 looks really good. Very little wiggle room. 17, 17's a bit tight. So that is how I measure everybody. Now 18 was the right answer. So 28 down to 18, that's a 10 millimeter difference. That will influence the comfort of the mom when she's pumping and how much milk will come out. So when you're pumping with the correct size, it's so much better. So I call that a win-win situation. Now here's where you're going to hear differences between different lactation consultants. They recommend a true fit size. Others will say add 2 to 3 millimeters. But even adding the 2 to 3, so we're at 18. If we add 2, there's a lot of wiggle room. And so I still get concerned about the swelling.
And are you going to have consistency in the size, or will it shift as your milk comes in? Will it shift as, pregnancy advances?
It depends. So that's also something that is incredibly individualized. I have seen some moms stay at the same size their entire lactation journey. I've seen others change.
Do pumps come with, are they better about coming with them, or do you have to really order specifically? How has that transferred?
It's getting better.
It's better,
I kind of
but
have like a face. It's getting better. So the major companies out there still send like the 24 or 25. They're getting better at sending like one smaller size, but it's still not enough. So I'm using the Flange inserts more and more because they're only getting cheaper and they're so accessible. And I feel like it's a really good way to start. So I like to prove a size just from a Flange first because we're talking less than $10. So prove that it's the right size. And then once they're like, yep, this is my size that I'm sitting with, then I recommend getting the full plastic. So it's not like the hard plastic plus the soft plastic, and then you're trying to look at your nipple. That just gets a little bit tricky. So I do it that way. I also recommend using some type of lubricant inside the flange tunnel because we're going to correct size. So we need smooth and slidey. You just think if it's tighter, you don't want any friction. Correct fit plus smooth and sliding.
And that's as you're doing the sizing, or that's as you're using the pump daily?
As you're using the pump. Yeah. So the flange insert would go right inside your main pump. And so this one is 28.5, but I've noticed that when it's the size 24 or 25, the inserts just fit and stay in better. Oh, and I do use my thumbs to like smush it in tight and as close fit as possible. I find that there's less leaky milk.
And when do you recommend starting pumping?
That is an excellent question too. So that is really going to depend on everybody's situation. So let's go back to the hospital setting situation. If everything is smooth and great, then I would talk about pumping and say, when you get home, just practice with it before it's something you have to do so you're comfortable with it. My clients may laugh when I say, become friends with it.
Breast friends.
Breast friends. I mean, pumping is awkward. Oh my gosh, it is so awkward. And so I usually describe it as if you feel awkward but not painful, you're doing it right. There you go. So if there's no reason that you need to start pumping for, then just casually try and make your settings feel like your baby, because that's the other side. Like we have correct fit for the flange. Your nipple feels good. It feels slidey in there. Now we set the settings so it feels like your baby. Now, if we're talking about a hospital situation where the baby's in the NICU, then they're not latching consistently. There's a lot of stress going on. There, I would say start with your hands. You always have your hands. And hospitals get busy, and I've been that hospital lactation. I've actually been the hospital postpartum nurse who's been delayed in getting the breast pump, or I've been the hospital lactation consultant that things get busy. And so it takes some time to get around and get it all set up. So start with hands first. If a baby is in a NICU, then I recommend pumping 8 to 10 times in a whole day. It's exhausting. It is a mental stretch for sure. But that is the best case scenario to keep a milk supply going until baby is healthy enough, strong enough, ready, whatever the situation is, to then latch on.
If baby has a great latch and they are, coming to the breast to nurse each time, can pumping actually create too much milk and cause engorgement?
Yes. And not just engorgement, but it causes an oversupply. People who have dealt with low supply think people with an oversupply, they just have it easy. They don't even know how great it is. But there are challenges on both sides. So I would say that an oversupply is just as troublesome as an undersupply. So yes. In fact, I was just talking with a mom this morning and she said, I wish I would have known you when I was nursing my baby because somebody told me to pump 5 times a day, but my baby was latching great and I had an oversupply and I got mastitis 4 times. So this tells me lots of things in her story. 1, whoever told her to pump 5 times a day sounds like they just gave a very arbitrary number. 2, they were not looking at the latch and seeing what else is going on. 3, if she had mastitis 4 times, then she didn't know that it starts as inflammation. So she didn't know the preventative care around it. So, and then I could go on because there are so many more.
Well, and there's such specific goals when it comes to pumping. For me, I loved breastfeeding my babies. I wanted that as part of our journey. It didn't always come easily. I had to work on the latch. And even with my 3rd baby, we were struggling. But we came to a point when I wanted a little bit of reserve so that they could have a bottle of breast milk when I wasn't able to feed them. But that doesn't require a lot of pumping. That would only require pumping maybe once a day.
Yeah.
And so my goal in pumping was very different than the mom who wanted to pump so that she could go back to work, 12 weeks postpartum. That is a very different pumping schedule. Where do you recommend as a consultant finding that correct schedule right off the bat?
Yeah. So let's take your scenario of needing to go back to work at 12 weeks. First of all, 12 weeks is amazing. Wow. If only. That is very lucky. So then I would say I would start somewhere around 2 weeks. And so that's kind of like the usual time frame where I see that you've worked through some latching struggles and latching is going easier. So my phrase in there is start bottles when latching is going so well, you're not working so hard at it anymore. You're not thinking so hard into it. And then that would be like the occasional pumping and the occasional bottle, because I can't talk about pumping without talking about bottles. And so in that way, I see it as two different languages, because the way a baby needs to curl their tongue to latch onto a breast is very different than the way they need to use their tongue to latch onto a bottle. And so learn the language of latching first. That was a lot of else, like that was a tongue twister. Learn the language of latching first and then figure out bottles. And then once you're at that point, so again, we're in the scenario that this is a mom who's going back to work at 12 weeks, then I would say do 1 bottle a week. More if needed. If baby is struggling with the bottles, then maybe it looks like 3 times a week, or maybe it looks like 1 every day. So that's going to be different for everybody. And then she's just practicing with her pump and getting familiar with it. So there would be step 1. And then when she's about 2 weeks from going back to work, then that would be really kind of nailing down what the work schedule looks like. Is it a 12-hour shift? Is it a 6-hour shift? Those are very different conversations. And so as a lactation consultant within Breezy Babies, we do back to work pumping plans. So we can like really get nitpicky about those times and how much milk to leave at home. So the general answers would be you still need to pump about every 2 to 3 hours while you're away from your baby. As many times as your baby would eat during that time period at home, that's how many times you're pumping, and that's how many bottles baby would be receiving. And so then it's a matter of calculating out if baby is this age and usually drinks this many ounces and needs this many bottles, then this is how many I'm leaving. Like, this is how much volume to leave with the daycare, the babysitter, the spouse, the grandma, whoever it is taking care of baby.
And I love that you have that resource so that it is specific to them. All right, so let's talk about lactation consultants, because I feel like a lot of people, when they're postpartum, a lot's happening. There's a lot of lack of sleep, and breastfeeding is not happening. It's not working, and they feel like, okay, this is just going to be easier to go to a formula-based option. What do you recommend for those individuals and how to find the care that they need if they have the desire to keep the journey of breastfeeding?
Your questions are so fantastic, and they're so layered, and there's so many parts in there. So if they are struggling, so that's one part of it, and they want to keep their lactation journey going, please reach out to a lactation consultant. So we are super fortunate to be in this area where we have a lot of access. But for those who are in another area of the country or another area of the world and don't have as much access, there's a ton of virtual support. So, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of this day and age that we live in. And so that would be my number 1. Reach out to somebody who is an expert, who knows what they're talking about, not just like, hey, my neighbor said that she breastfed 7 kids and so she can come over and help you. So while that's helpful, you'll go farther with somebody who's actually trained for it. So let's say then it's the scenario of it's not working, it's negative to everybody, parents ready to be done. Great. Then we talk about weaning down the supply and using formula correctly. So as a lactation consultant, I'm going to focus on the breastfeeding relationship. I'm very specific about how I talk about formula, because the formula companies are just so bombarding everybody with marketing and messages and, kind of putting down breast milk and saying formula is always going to be better. So it has a place. It's needed when it's needed. It's not if it's not. Am I talking in circles? So I talk about it more of finding the balance that's going to be specific for that family, that honors what their goals are. Because it's not about my goals. It's about her goals and what's going to work best for the family.
And it's interesting to see this pendulum, because I feel like as a society, we are getting better about fed is best and releasing the shame there, because people have different experiences with breastfeeding for sure. And I feel like when I had my first, everyone wanted to know if I was breastfeeding. The deli counter lady, the neighbor, my mom. And it felt like so much pressure. And I feel like, again, with this pendulum, hopefully we're getting back to a middle ground of supporting each other's goals and what we want to do. With my first, I did exclusive pumping. With my second, I did formula only. And with my third, I did a full breastfeeding journey. And so it's just interesting that even down to child, it's different. You said with your third, you still had to relearn. Babies don't always come learning or knowing how to breastfeed.
You may have an understanding, but it's brand new for that baby.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I do have a little bit of a struggle with the fed is best because I think, well, fed is minimum. So what else is going on? I always have more questions. What else is going on? What else is in the family's history? What else has the mom tried? What's in her health history? Does she have risk factors for low supply? Does she have risk factors for oversupply? Is it, does baby have any struggles with latching on? So it's always that, what else is there?
It's so nuanced. And many women will say, well, my boobs just didn't work. Like I didn't have the success, like they didn't work. And you always wonder, like, is there a formula? Is there a lactation consultant who says, hey, I need to work with you for 4 weeks before we determine, okay, like it really isn't working? Or is it more individual to the woman saying, like this is too much stress on my mental health. This is too much stress for our family. We just need to move on, and formula is accessible. Some people can't afford formula. And so they have to like fight through that struggle. And so just meeting with you today and wanting to know, like for our audience out there, when they feel unsuccessful, in the breastfeeding journey, knowing that formulas out there, lactation consultants are out there to provide us the resources. There's a lot of great options. And we do want to look at everything positively, that we will find a solution that is going to work, and it's going to be best for mom and for baby in each family.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our whole entire discussion so far is there is no one size fits all. So, again, going back to my hospital experience, I would even go and talk with the moms who came to the hospital and said, formula only, that's my plan. So here I would come in. Hi, I'm Holly, the lactation consultant. It was hilarious that all of them would like shift back.
Did they almost have like a no solicitor sign that they wanted to give to you?
And it would be like, I don't need you. And they would be so polite about it. Or, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm okay. And so I will always come in lightheartedly and say, I know that you're not planning on breastfeeding. You know that, but your boobs don't really know that just yet. Well, I know this is your plan. So let's talk about breast care as you are either stopping your milk from coming in or, whatever the story was, and managing it through there. Because just as my soapbox is protect the nipples all the time, even if somebody is weaning, stopping, whatever it is, pain doesn't have to be a part of the story. It really isn't. I think that in our culture where women are just expected to deal with pain and we're told that's just how it is. It is what it is. That's another phrase that I take issue with. So sure, a situation is presented, but then how do you respond to it? Are you just expected to grit your teeth and suffer through? But how often are we told that that's the right message?
And if that's what they're experiencing in breastfeeding, it's no wonder that they want to give it up rapidly, because it should not be painful. And, wonderful individuals like you who are there to help us through this journey, like that's what can make it possible.
Right.
You talked a little bit about weaning. Can you tell us more? So let's say we've had a successful breastfeeding journey, however many months or years we want. Are there some tips that you can give us for, like ending the lactation?
Yeah, absolutely. And just while we're on this note, I cheer for any amount of breastfeeding. So when I'm working with somebody and they're like, I only breastfed for 2 weeks with my last one. Only? Congratulations. 2 weeks. I'm so proud of you. So 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. Great. I am so proud of you. So that will always be the stance that I'm going to start with. And then, okay, so now we are at a weaning story. That's when I would really like to get specific. How many times a day are you nursing? How many times a day are you pumping? Let's find out the rhythm through that. How much volume are you creating? Because again, very specific. So I take all of that information. In fact, I just made a weaning plan for one of my clients. And that's based on how many times a day she was pumping. my number one, and it sounds hilarious and ridiculous. It's cabbage leaves.
You know about cabbage
Oh,
leaves.
yeah.
Yeah. So I love that because it is cheap and it is accessible to almost everybody in the world. So start there. And I usually say, send your partner out to the grocery store or wherever it is that they're going to get their cabbage, because the partner is going to know the breast size so much better than the mom herself. So it's just true. Everybody that I say that to, the partner's like, yes, I do. So you take that home, you take off a leaf, and I do like to, it's like food prep. So you get your cabbage leaf prep, take them off, give them a good rinse, put them in a Ziploc bag and toss it in your fridge because then it's cold. And then when you're ready for it, you take out one leaf, just crush it in your hand. So you have to break that main vein through the leaf and then put it on your breast. Now, here's another one where a lot of lactation consultants are going to say differing opinions. Others say, yes, cover the nipple. Some say, no, don't cover the nipple at all. I'm very protective of the nipples. We haven't already established that. So I don't cover the nipple here, but I layer it all on. And when it is warm and wilted, then take it out, put new leaves in. Cabbage has an anti-inflammatory component to it. And so as it warms up to body temperature, it's like an enzyme that seeps in and shrinks up the lactocytes, the milk-making cells. So as often as is needed. So I do use this during engorgement times, but very, very carefully and cautiously because it dries up milk so well. So cabbage leaves is my number one because it's cheap and it's accessible. There is a product called Cabo Cream, and this has the component of cabbage leaves, but in a cream, so it's a little more user-friendly. So you're not walking around with a vegetable on your boob, right? It's just more expensive. So after that, I talk about teas. So when I'm working with a client and we are promoting the milk supply, then I say avoid sage, peppermint, and antihistamines because those will drop the milk supply. But when we're talking about a weaning story, if a parent is safe to take those, like doesn't have any allergies, doesn't have anything that would be a negative reaction to it, then drink it as a tea. Essential oils are really popular around here, so I usually talk about it in that way. Dilute it with coconut oil and then massage into the breast, never touching the nipple. Because think about when you've been sick and you're using like vapor rub or some kind of menthol and it burns your eyeballs. So we don't want that feeling on nipples. So I usually say like mid-glandular tissue and then up toward the armpit from there.
And is there a certain time after the baby's born where weaning will happen more naturally? I know some suggest to just take it slow and, like there's different methods, right, in weaning your baby. Don't offer, don't refuse. And so as your baby is interested, maybe like one day they'll come and then 2 days will go by and they'll come back. And your supply has probably dipped below, so you're not really worried if they're nursing or not. Seems like a supply can stick around for quite some time, but then you might have just a little bit less struggle to really be like worried about getting rid of all that milk and using cabbage or using other oils to like make it go away.
Right. So in that situation, that is just a very slow, gradual, that's the ideal situation. Most people don't come to me when they're in their ideal situations. So that's why I'm going to have my toolbox of all my tips and tricks. And that's when those come in, when somebody's like, okay, I'm done. So it's most commonly from an exclusive pumping story.
How many weeks would it take from nursing a baby once a day to then having like your milk just not be available anymore? Is it a matter of weeks?
I do usually say plan at least a month for that to happen. But again, very, very different. So even if somebody is latching their baby one time a day, like let's say it's a 2-year-old at this point who latches once or twice a day, we don't know how much volume that is. It may be a lot, it may be a little. If it's a lot, it's going to take a little bit longer to totally dry off. If it's a little, shorter time. So I have found, okay, back to the crocheted boob. And this crocheted boob that I brought today, this is one that I made. And I put weight into it so it feels like 5 ounces because that's kind of a typical high end of normal. So just to kind of feel that there. That is what 5 ounces feels like.
Wow.
I also put some lumps in there so it feels like clogged milk ducts. And I have these on my website. I have an Etsy shop for it. So that would be my light of lactation. But what I found is that some people like to use these crocheted boobs to help during weaning time because a baby is still wanting that round and softness, but with a little bit of the weight. And that can help them through their journey. I do make boobs with flat nipples, so it just kind of looks like a ball. So it's not like going to tip off the whole public to it like, oh, that is a boob that a toddler is walking around with. So I find it useful in so many different ways.
Well, this conversation has been so enlightening. I feel like I have learned numerous things that I'm going to, take home. And that's why we have these experts on the show, is so that they can share everything that they have found through their practices, through serving their clients, they can share with you. Is there anything else that you want to share with us as we close, just on how to support these women in their lactation journeys?
Yeah. So the last piece that I want to talk about is resource at people's fingertips. So let's say there's somewhere that doesn't have access to in-person support, or everybody's questions come up at 2 and 3 a.m., right? Everybody. That's where everybody goes to Google, like, what is this problem? And then you think like everything is horrible, right? Because then it's too much information. I do have an Instagram, so Light Up Lactation on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. So I share a lot of tips and tricks there, easily accessible, bite-sized pieces of information. You don't have to follow. I would love for you to follow me. You don't have to, because there are a ton of amazing lactation consultants out there. So that's who you're looking for, somebody who is IBCLC. So that means that they've done all the education. They've done all of their hours. They've passed the exam. They stay up on their continuing education. Those are the experts. Leche League is the ultimate, like the original amazing resource. So look to Leche League. It is in every single country. Look for breastfeeding support groups. I host a free support group up in Kaysville twice a month. And it's been great for moms to get together and get answers to questions they didn't even know they had questions on. And so it's been beautiful. County health departments are amazing. Call the lactation consultants at your birth settings, wherever it is. Help is out there. So that's my bottom line, that help is out there. Nobody has to go through this alone.
Yeah. Every week we share a Mom Squad secret from someone in our community. So this week's comes from 6-year-old Yvette. And she says, don't wake up mama when she's sleeping. Always let her sleep. And don't take the baby away until he's finished nursing. He will scream.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Oh, so good. Yes. And one other question that came to mind that we didn't discuss is nursing bras. When is an appropriate time, or, navigating that?
Yes. Okay. So I know we're nearing our end, but I do enjoy talking about nursing bras because there are so many out there. So I do recommend something that's called like a transitional bra. It's soft, it's stretchy. In the last trimester, or like the last month-ish before the baby is born, buy one of those. Go get fitted, go to your nearest store, whatever it is. Get one of those bras that you can show up to your birth setting and already have that bra on. It usually has clips on the straps that easily open and close. So that would be my number one. Start with something that you can sleep in. After that time, so we talk a lot about milk coming in. That is a little bit of a misnomer. So milk starts around 16 to 20 weeks of gestation. So the milk is there. What we're really talking about is a difference between the volume of colostrum, a very small amount, to transitional milk. That is the point where milk comes in, to then mature milk. So that's going to take a couple weeks. So after that first wave of engorgement that just kind of settles in, then the supply tends to just level off. That is when I recommend going to get fitted for a good bra. Doesn't have to be a wired bra. It can be wireless, but get one that feels good, that meets your needs. It could be a nursing tank top. It could be a nursing bra from a high-end store. It could be whatever you want it to be. But I am a firm believer of wear something that fits right, that makes you feel pretty. Because when you're breastfeeding, you don't always feel pretty. You feel kind of like a leaky mess.
And there's new clothing lines that are suited directly to nursing. And so you don't have to, just continue to wear kind of like your pregnancy and maternity clothing. You can wear
just
those.
A baggy shirt.
Yeah. As many moms know, if you've ever tried to nurse in a dress where you have to like zip it up in the back and there's no access on the top or the bottom, you need some of that clothing to nurse.
Exactly. Okay. So one of the moms who came to this free breastfeeding support group, she had just been at a wedding. And so she came back with pictures and said, look at my outfit. It's nursing friendly. Yeah. It has a secret pocket right here. And look how darling it was. Oh, we were all so excited for her.
Oh, so great. I love that. I love that there's resources at every stage and phase and purpose. So yeah, thank you for this conversation. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. This has been a delight. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. We hope you've been elevated and inspired by this week's expert.
Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. And please share our podcast or post on your social media so that other moms and dads-to-be can also have the best birth.
Please note that the information provided is based on the expert's insights and personal experience. It is not intended as medical guidance. Please seek the advice of your medical provider as it applies to your specific condition.